This is Amba from the Equal Center for Promotion of Social Justice. This presentation is a look at the draft clinical trial rules and what it means for persons with disabilities. What is a clinical trial? When a product is to be launched in the market, it needs to be tested to prove its efficacy and understand side effects. This also applies to any therapy, medication, or vaccine being introduced. For every 100 clinical trials, only 10 actually end up in the market. Why do we need clinical trials? Usually, a medical board studies the research and development of whatever is sought to be tested, and only then will they allow trials to take place. So clinical trials are definitely based on a lot of research. These may have been tested on animals, but now is the first time that these drugs are being tested on human beings. So the trials are to find out if the drug, vaccine, or therapy is effective against the disease or not. It also checks for side effects of the medication, like drowsiness, nausea, or more serious ones. Anyone who wants to volunteer for a clinical trial, therefore, needs to know the background of the testing and the risks involved. But it's hard to imagine any new therapy or medical development without a clinical trial taking place. The importance of clinical trials again can be underlined by the fact that for every 100 drugs that undergo clinical trials, only 10 actually obtain the results which make them eligible to enter the market. Who can undergo a clinical trial? Some trials involve people who are perfectly healthy to see the effect on them. Some trials involve people who already have the health condition that the drug seeks to treat. People may opt for trials on the advice of their doctor or from information they receive otherwise. Participating in clinical trials is free, and the patient may even get some payment over and above this. There are many variations on what kind of trials, depending on what stage the medicine or therapy is at. One important kind of trial is called placebo testing, when there is a group of people who will be tested, and half of them will receive the drug, and half of them will receive something that looks exactly like the drug, but has no medication power. This is called a placebo. The candidates are asked to take the drug for a period of time, and the changes in their health are monitored. The objective is to see whether the effect of the medicine is better than taking no medicine at all. The people taking part in the trial have no idea whether they've been given the real medicine or the placebo, but both groups are monitored. Trials may be limited to people who have the condition that the medicine seeks to treat, but within that group, there may be restrictions on age, gender. There may also be restrictions on participants. For example, women may be advised not to get pregnant during the duration of the trial. Similarly, there may be dietary restrictions. Sometimes, a drug that is still under testing can be made available to a person who has the condition that the medicine seeks to treat. This person may not be eligible for clinical trials otherwise. There may not be any cure for this condition, in which case the doctors may recommend that the person be treated by the process under testing. Some important aspects regarding trials. Trials can generally only be conducted when patients give informed consent for the same. Informed consent means consent given after understanding all the information relating to this decision. For this, patients are allowed to consult persons of their choice, including their doctors and family. Patients should be given information on the results of trials so far, possible side effects, whether it is a placebo trial, etc. Can persons with disabilities participate in clinical trials? Yes, they can, if other conditions are met. With the recent expansion of the list of scheduled impairments under Indian law to include conditions like hemophilia, thalassemia, multiple sclerosis, etc., there may be medical interventions that require persons with these conditions to participate. The same goes for persons with mental health conditions. Therapies for management of conditions and some aids and devices may also be subject to clinical trials. So what's happening in India? Clinical trials have actually been taking place in India for a long time. Prior to this, there have been reports of badly regulated clinical trials being conducted in India that would definitely not have been allowed in countries like the US or the EU, where regulations are very strict. In fact, there have been reports that in Indore, clinical trials were administered on 233 patients who had gone to doctors seeking psychiatric treatment between 2009 and 2010. Some of these patients died. There are issues of obtaining informed consent or any consent at all of patients, some of whom may be illiterate, compensation in case of death or disability of a patient, and conflict of interest in monitoring tests. In 2013, all clinical trials in India were stopped by the Supreme Court, and the government was asked to frame proper rules. New rules, the New Drug and Clinical Trial Rules 2018, have been framed, and the deadline for comment is the 15th of March 2018. Let's take a look at the draft rules. First of all, any organization that wants to conduct a clinical trial must appoint an ethics committee. The ethics committee will comprise of doctors, pharmacologists, lawyers, philosophers, and even lay people without any specific qualifications. The ethics committee is supposed to oversee the trial and ensure that all patients' rights are respected. Any organization that wants to perform a clinical trial needs to constitute an ethics committee. Then it needs to make an application to the Governmental Central Licensing Authority in the proper format. The government will issue approval after it is satisfied that all the tests will be conducted in a proper manner. Informed consent of patients is very important. There is a format for obtaining informed consent. Information on the test should be available in an easy-to-read format. On the slide, this is an extract from a clinical trial for a fertility drug that was conducted in India. I'm reading it out. What bad things may happen to me if I take part in the study? Some procedures may be unpleasant or unsafe. In Table 3, you can read about known bad things that can happen. More likely things could happen in 1 of 5 procedures. Less likely could happen to less than 1 woman in 100 procedures. Most unpleasant things will go away after the procedure. More serious risks are marked in red. The first, blood tests. More likely, pain and bruising at the site where the needle goes in, lightheadedness. Less likely, infection. Hysteroscopy. More likely, light pain in the lower part of your belly during the procedure, slight vaginal bleeding, and pain for a day or 2 after the procedure. Less likely, infection, inflammation in the belly, scratching or tearing of the uterus. Marked in red, this may heal itself or require surgery. Ultrasound studies. Slight discomfort with the insertion of the ultrasound device into the vagina. Less likely, allergy, as the device will be covered with latex wrapper. The manner in which the information is explained and the person's consent will also be recorded on camera for the ethics committee to verify. Under the draft rules, there are some persons who are deemed not able to give informed consent. Examples given are an unconscious person, a minor child, those suffering from severe mental illness or disability. The same may be obtained from a legally acceptable representative who is able to give consent or authorize an intervention in the patient as provided by the law in India. This would typically be a guardian. Children should be represented by their parents. However, the rules say that as far as possible, their own consent should be taken. On behalf of persons with disabilities, it looks like guardians can give their assent. In the recently passed Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, there are also provisions regarding research on persons with disabilities. Section 6 says that no person with disability shall be a subject of any research without his or her free and informed consent. It does not talk about anyone making the decision on behalf of the person with disability. Consent is to be obtained through accessible modes, means, and formats of communication. In this slide, we see the use of sign language, braille, and AAC chart. Along with the informed consent, prior permission of a Committee for Research on Disability must be granted. Rule 4 explains the committee. The Committee for Research on Disability will be chaired by an eminent person with experience in science or medicine. Other members will include from the government, a nominee of the Director General of Health Services, and the Director, Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities. 4 persons from the National Institutes representing physical, visual, hearing, and intellectual disabilities. 5 persons who represent the 5 groups of specified disabilities in the schedule to the Act: physical disabilities, intellectual disabilities, mental behavior, neurological and blood disorders, and multiple disabilities. Rule 5 says that no person with disability shall be a subject of research except when the research involves physical impact on his body. That may exclude persons with disabilities from participating in other clinical trials. We at Equals are in the process of compiling a response to this on behalf of the disability sector. We have questions and we seek your comments on behalf of your respective interest groups. As usual, we will credit the responses and circulate a draft for signatures that may support it. These are our questions. Is there a contradiction between the draft clinical trial rules and the RPWD Act and rules? How do we resolve it? How do we make sure clinical trials are accessible for persons with disabilities? Information. The information regarding the trial, including the background of the research, the results so far, must be made available by means that is accessible to everyone. This includes simple language formats, screen reader compliance, sign language, audiovisual explanations. Communication. Persons must be allowed to communicate in the manner in which they are comfortable while providing their informed consent. This includes ensuring access to an interpreter or support person as required and making available a wide range of support and communication services. Accessibility and reasonable accommodation in trial procedures. When considering proposals for clinical trials, it must be ascertained whether the proposal includes provisions, infrastructure, personnel, and budgetary, to ensure the participation of persons with disabilities on an equal basis with others. Non-discrimination. Persons with disabilities should not be denied participation in clinical trials or access to medications under named patient programs. Respect for will and preference of the individual. Decisions regarding whether a person with disability should participate in a clinical trial cannot be left to the sole discretion of the guardian or next of kin. Protocols for obtaining consent must abide by the will and preference of the individual, as can be ascertained if the person is unable to express the same. Please write to us with your comments and suggestions on behalf of the disability sector at amba@equalcpsj.org. You can also send them on WhatsApp by way of video or audio message on 98840 45265. Thanks for listening.